Welcome back to the channel Top Coin. Coin collectors, treasure hunters and history lovers, today we are diving deep into one of the most fascinating coins that often gets overlooked in the world of numismatics, the Canadian quarter dollar from 1967. This coin is not just a piece of metal, it is a piece of Canadian history, a collector's dream, and in some cases worth far more than its face value. Now let us set the stage. The year was 1967. Canada was celebrating its centennial, 100 years since Confederation. To mark this milestone, the Royal Canadian Mint released a special set of circulating coins. Unlike regular designs, each coin featured a unique Canadian animal chosen to represent the country's natural heritage, and for the 25-cent piece, the artist Alex Colville created the iconic image of a bobcat in mid-stride. It was bold, simple and powerful, a departure from the traditional caribou that we normally associate with Canadian quarters. The 1967 quarter is especially intriguing for collectors because of its composition. During that year, Canada was transitioning away from silver coins. Early in 1967, the quarters were struck in 80% silver and 20% copper, but later that same year the mint shifted to a 50% silver and 50% copper mix. This means that depending on when your coin was produced, it may have a higher or lower silver content. Collectors today hunt for both versions, and the silver value alone already makes these coins worth more than their 25-cent face value. But what really makes the 1967 Canadian quarter exciting is not just the silver, it is the historical context. Imagine holding in your hand a coin that circulated during Canada's centennial celebrations. Millions of Canadians used these coins for everyday purchases, unaware that decades later they would become prized collectibles. The design itself, the bobcat, represents strength, independence and the untamed wilderness that defines much of Canada's landscape. It is not just currency, it is art. Now let us talk value, because I know that is what most of you are waiting to hear. If you have a 1967 Canadian quarter, the value can vary quite a bit depending on condition, silver content and whether it has any rare errors. Circulated examples with heavyware usually trade for a bit above silver melt value. For the 50% silver version, that might mean around $3 to $5 depending on current silver prices. For the 80% silver variety, you can expect closer to $6 to $8, again fluctuating with the market. But here is where it gets interesting. Uncirculated coins that were never used in everyday transactions, can fetch much higher prices. If you have a quarter that looks bright with sharp details, collectors may pay $20, $30 or even more depending on grading. Some proof-like or specimen strikes produced for collectors can bring even higher premiums. In pristine condition, certified by a grading service, we are talking about values in the hundreds of dollars. Another thing to watch out for are errors. Yes, coin errors from 1967 are highly collectible. Examples include off-center strikes, die cracks and double strikes. Any of these mistakes from the mint can make your coin worth significantly more. Some error coins have been known to sell for hundreds of dollars because of their rarity and desirability. So let us do a quick recap. If you find a 1967 Canadian quarter in your collection or in a jar of old coins, first, check the silver content. Remember, there are two types, 80% silver and 50% silver. Both are worth more than face value, but the 80% version is more desirable. Next, check the condition. If it is heavily worn, you still have silver value. If it is sharp, bright and uncirculated, then you may have a much more valuable coin. And if you spot any mint errors, you could be holding a real treasure. As for the current market value today, with silver prices changing daily, these coins remain popular among collectors and bullion buyers alike. They are an accessible way to own a piece of Canadian history without spending a fortune, yet the potential upside, especially with rare examples, is tremendous. Coin shops, online marketplaces and auctions regularly feature these coins, and demand remains strong, especially for high-grade examples. And let us not forget the sentimental and historical value. This coin marks a moment in Canadian history that will never come again. The centennial year of 1967. When you hold it, you are not just holding silver, you are holding a story of a nation celebrating its 100th birthday, a story of an artist capturing the spirit of Canada in the form of a bobcat, and a story of ordinary coins becoming extraordinary treasures. So next time you are sorting through change or browsing at a flea market or even checking through that jar of coins left behind by your grandparents, keep an eye out for the 1967 Canadian quarter. It may look like just 25 cents, but in reality it could be a lot more, both in monetary value and in historical significance. That wraps up today's deep dive into the 1967 Canadian quarter. If you enjoyed learning about this fascinating coin, make sure to like the video, subscribe for more coin history and value guides, and leave a comment below. Have you ever found a 1967 Canadian quarter in your collection? Do you own one with the 80% silver composition, or maybe even a rare error? I would love to hear your stories. Thanks for watching, and as always, happy collecting. Today we are going to dive deep into the world of Canadian coins and focus on one coin that often surprises collectors with its history and potential value, the 1974 Canadian quarter. Now, at first glance, the 1974 quarter might look like an ordinary piece of change, something you might pass around 100 times without even noticing, but behind that small silver-colored coin there is a lot of history, unique details, and some hidden treasures that can make it worth far more than just 25 cents. Let us start with the background. Canada in 1974 was in the middle of a period of inflation and rising metal prices, which means the Royal Canadian Mint was paying close attention to the composition of the coins they were making. At that time, the standard quarter was struck not from silver anymore but from nickel, with a pure nickel content that gave it its distinctive look and magnetic properties. That is right, you can actually test a 1974 Canadian quarter with a magnet and it will stick. Because of its nickel composition on the front of the coin, you will see the effigy of Queen Elizabeth II, designed by Arnold Machin. This portrait was used throughout the late 1960s and 1970s and is one of the most familiar images of the Queen for Canadian collectors. The reverse of the coin shows the classic Canadian caribou designed by Emmanuel Hahn, which has been a Canadian quarter design since 1937, a timeless image that really ties the coin to Canada's wildlife and heritage. But here is where it gets interesting. Even though millions of these coins were produced in 1974, not all coins are created equal. Yes, the face value is only 25 cents, but collectors look for condition, rarity, and errors, and when you combine those three things, the market value can jump dramatically. So let us break it down. First, condition or grade. If your 1974 Canadian quarter is heavily worn with scratches or dents, it is generally only worth its face value. However, if you have a coin in mint state condition, meaning it has never been circulated or has only the slightest marks, then it could be worth several dollars, sometimes even more than $10 or $15, just because of its pristine condition. Now, if you have a coin that has been professionally graded by a service like ICCS or PCGS and it comes back with a high grade such as MS65 or MS66, that coin could command strong prices at auction. Now, second, let us talk about minting errors, and this is where the real excitement begins. Errors are mistakes that happen at the mint and they create coins that are unusual or one of a kind. Some of the most valuable 1974 quarters are those with double strikes, off-center strikes, die cracks, or missing details. For example, if you find a quarter that has doubling on the date or on the lettering of Canada or Elizabeth, that could turn a simple pocket change coin into something collectors are willing to pay serious money for. Another known issue is planchet errors, where the coin was struck on an imperfect or wrong blank. These can be worth hundreds of dollars in the right circumstances, and there have even been rare reports of wrong planchet strikes where a Canadian quarter was accidentally struck on a blank intended for a different coin. These errors are highly sought after because they are so scarce. Now, you may be wondering, what about silver value? Because earlier Canadian quarters from before 1968 were made with silver and are now worth several times their face value based on silver melt alone. By 1974, the silver had been removed and replaced with nickel, so unfortunately there is no silver value in this year. However, the collectible value still exists because of grading and errors. So what is the current market value today in 2025? If you have a circulated 1974 Canadian quarter in average condition, it is worth 25 cents, just a regular quarter. But if you have a higher grade example, maybe something you pulled from a mint set or something that looks uncirculated, then you could be looking at anywhere from $1 to $10 depending on quality. If you have a certified mint state coin at MS65 or higher, you could be looking at $20 to $50 in some cases, and if you are lucky enough to have an error coin, then the value could skyrocket. Some rare errors have sold for over $100 or more at auctions and private sales. The coin market has ups and downs, but Canadian coins, especially those from the 1970s, remain very collectible. Many collectors love to complete date sets, and they always need a nice example of the 1974 quarter, which helps keep the demand going. So the big question is, should you check your change for a 1974 Canadian quarter? Absolutely yes, not only because of the potential value but also because holding on to one gives you a little piece of Canadian history. The 1970s were a fascinating time for coinage, with changes in metal prices and a growing collector community. Now, here is my tip if you are searching through your change or coin rolls. Always look carefully at the date, flip the coin under a bright light, check for doubling on the letters, check if it looks off-center or unusually struck, and if it looks especially shiny and untouched, consider getting it graded. Collectors pay premiums for coins that have been preserved in top quality. And one more fascinating detail about the 1974 Canadian quarter: it marks a time just before the major Canadian coinage redesign of 1982, so it represents the last decade of a consistent design before modernization really took over. That makes it a bridge between classic Canadian coinage and more modern issues, and collectors love that kind of historical connection. So to sum it all up, the 1974 Canadian quarter may look ordinary, but in the right condition and with the right errors it can be worth far more than face value, from a simple 25 cents all the way to potentially hundreds of dollars for rare examples. That is why you should never overlook the change in your pocket, because treasures are hiding in plain sight. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the history and value of the 1974 Canadian quarter, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell, because we will continue exploring more coins from Canada and around the world. You never know what stories and surprises might be hidden in your collection. Today we are diving into the fascinating world of Canadian coins, and in particular a coin that many people overlook but collectors are starting to pay very close attention to. We are talking about the 1998 Canadian quarter-dollar coin. Now, at first glance, this 25-cent piece might look just like any other change that you toss into your pocket or your car cup holder. But the truth is, the history behind this coin and the value it can hold today may surprise you and even make you check your coin jars and wallets. Right after this video, let us start with a little background. The Canadian quarter has always carried great cultural significance. It is a coin that Canadians use daily, but over time the designs and the minting details have created certain issues and variations that make some years far more collectible than others. The 1998 quarter dollar stands out as one of those special years. Produced by the Royal Canadian Mint in the late 90s, this coin came at a time when Canada was making subtle transitions in coin production. While the standard design shows the familiar caribou on the reverse and Queen Elizabeth II on the obverse, the small details in the minting process are what make some of these coins worth a surprising amount of money today. In 1998, the Mint was experimenting with different compositions and striking methods. That means that while millions of quarters were made, not every single one came out identical. Some ended up with slight differences, known in the numismatic world as varieties or errors. Collectors hunt for these differences because rarity is everything in coin collecting. A tiny double strike on the lettering, an off-center strike, or even a change in the metal composition can turn a regular 25-cent coin into something valued at tens or even hundreds of dollars, depending on its condition. Condition is another major factor. When we talk about coin grading, we are referring to the level of wear, scratches, shine, and overall appearance. A circulated coin is one that has been used in daily life. It will naturally show marks, dullness, and small imperfections. Those are usually worth face value or slightly above. But if you find a 1998 Canadian quarter that is uncirculated, meaning it has never been spent and still shines as if it just left the mint, that is where the value begins to climb. Some collectors and auction houses have seen pristine mint state examples of the 1998 quarter selling for far more than you might expect. Now let us get into the part everyone wants to know. What is the current market value? As of today, collectors are paying a wide range depending on rarity and condition. A normal circulated 1998 Canadian quarter might be worth 25 cents to a couple of dollars if it is in decent shape. But a coin in uncirculated or mint state condition, graded by professional services like ICCS or PCGS, can bring anywhere from $10 to $50 and sometimes more if it is especially high grade. The real excitement comes when we talk about errors and varieties. There are examples of the 1998 quarter that were struck on different planchets, meaning the wrong type of blank metal disc was used. These wrong planchet errors are extremely rare, and when they come up for auction they can sell for hundreds of dollars. Another example is double die errors, where the design looks like it has been struck twice, creating a shadow effect on the lettering or numbers. Collectors love these because they are so easy to see with the naked eye and they represent a clear mistake from the mint. Depending on the severity and clarity of the doubling, some of these have sold for more than $100. Another factor that adds to the value is whether the coin was part of a proof or specimen set. Proof coins are struck with extra care using polished dies and special planchets. They have a mirror-like finish and are sold directly to collectors in protective packaging. A 1998 proof quarter in perfect condition can be far more valuable than its circulation counterpart. Specimen coins are also specially made for collectors and can command premium prices today. When you consider all of these factors, it becomes clear that the 1998 Canadian quarter is much more than just pocket change. It represents a moment in Canadian coinage history, a time when the mint was advancing technology and experimenting with quality. Collectors are now beginning to recognize the importance of late 90s Canadian coinage because the market for modern coins is growing stronger every year. Younger collectors are entering the hobby and they are especially interested in coins they grew up with. That makes the 1998 quarter a perfect piece to hold onto. So what should you do if you find one of these coins? First, take a close look. Check the date and examine the coin for any unusual marks, doubling, or striking errors. If it looks perfect and shiny, you may have an uncirculated example. The best step is to handle it carefully, avoid touching it with bare hands, and consider submitting it to a grading service if it truly looks special. Grading can cost money, but it also provides authentication and a professional opinion that can increase your selling price later on. Another tip is to pay attention to online markets and auctions. Websites like eBay show real-world prices of what collectors are currently paying. This is the most up-to-date way to judge the true market value. Some listings show these coins selling for just under $10, while others with higher grades and special attributes sell for $50, $100, or even more. As we move forward, the demand for Canadian era coins and high-grade modern quarters is only increasing. That means if you have a 1998 Canadian quarter, it is worth holding onto and keeping safe. Who knows, the value could continue to rise in the future as collectors compete for the best examples. In conclusion, the 1998 Canadian quarter may appear to be an ordinary 25-cent coin, but hidden in that small piece of metal is history, rarity, and potential value that far exceeds its face amount. From uncirculated gems to striking errors and proof specimens, these coins are becoming highly collectible and in some cases worth a lot of money. So next time you come across a Canadian quarter from 1998, do not overlook it. Give it a careful examination because it just might be the hidden treasure sitting right in your pocket. If you enjoyed this video and want to learn more about rare coins, values, and collecting tips, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you never miss our future uploads. Thank you for watching and happy collecting.